She says her grandfather foresaw a 25-year period of purification leading up to the year 2012, when the earth will purge itself. This corresponds to Hopi prophecy that the earth will go through a great purification at the start of the fifth world. Speaking Wind, a Pueblo Native American from northern New Mexico, adds that there will be a 12-year purification leading up to the year 2012. That date is recorded in his tribe's star calendars.
Credo Mutwa is a Sanazi, a Zulu Sanazi, which is a shaman, and he says that a long time ago a huge planet came into the area of our solar system and that it caused destruction and tidal waves, and it's known as Mushosho Nono. And he also says that it's due to return in the year of the Red Bull, and the year of the Red Bull is 2012. The Maori have a creation myth in which they say that years ago, at the beginning, the earth was down here and the sky was up here. That's Rangi and Papa, the two gods, were actually in a close embrace, one tightly on top of the other, and that as a result of that embrace, they had children, and the children pushed their parents apart, and that's why the sky is up there and the earth is down here. One of those gods was called Tain, the god of war, and mankind is known as the children of Tain. And they say that one day when mankind is distracted and doesn't remember the old myths and the gods anymore, that the two gods will take the opportunity to crash back together again, and the earth and the sky will crash back together, and they call that the curtain will fall, which sounds like it's the end of the play and it's all over. But one of the young Maoris then got to interview the old Maoris, and it turned out that two of the words in this curtain will fall phrase have actually mutated over the years, and originally the word for curtain should have been veil, and the word for fall should have been dissolve. So they're saying the veil will dissolve, and that word veil is the same word that they use for the veil between life and death. So it's indicating crossing of our normal perceptual boundaries beyond the third dimension into that realm beyond death. There's a Peruvian spiritual messenger called Walaru Hueta. He says that the Peruvian calendar will end in 2013 when a huge magnetic asteroid comes into the solar system and causes mass death and purification.
Now, the interesting thing about 2012 is actually that we have a bit of a synchronicity, or perhaps it's just a coincidence. It's the end of a calendar, and it's also known to be a galactic alignment and a high peak of sunspot activity. Whether this is coincidence or design is something which is probably a religious debate rather than a scientific one, but it's a fact that researchers like Patrick Garill, who've been working on 2012 in extreme detail, actually believe that the sunspot cycle of 2012 will be causing so many disasters that 2012, the Mayan prophecy of 2012, is all about this. It's a warning. And interestingly enough, it's also a theme which has been explored in a movie called Knowing, whereby science actually discovers that 2012, even though it's not said as such, but that we do live in a time whereby the sun will cause the end of civilization, if not the end of the world as such, and that this is a planetary phenomenon. So coincidence or synchronicity, nobody knows, but it is an interesting overlapping of events.
Between the 17th and 20th of January 2005, a giant sunspot the size of Jupiter spat out 5 giant solar flares. The third storm shot several billion tons of protons that traveled from the sun to the Earth in about a half an hour, much faster than the usual 2 days it normally takes for these protons to travel that distance. Incredibly, the protons were traveling at a quarter of the speed of light. Science does not have an explanation as to why. Ohio State University glaciologist Lonnie Thompson is the scientist upon which the character played by Dennis Quaid in The Day After Tomorrow is based. Thompson has assembled a mass of evidence that suggests that 5,200 years ago, the Earth experienced a climate catastrophe. He concludes that a sharp drop, then a surge in solar activity, transformed the Sahara from a green belt to a desert and shrank the ice caps at the poles.
Such a catastrophe is said to only really occur solar activity-wise every 250 million years. So for something to happen in 2012 is very unlikely, but hey, it's nature and anything is possible. However, there is one factor which we need to take into account, which is that unlike in 3100 BC, we have got an enormous amount of people living on this earth, over 6 billion people on this planet. So every small catastrophe which might have gone unrecorded in 3100 BC could have a potential of millions, if not billions of people dying at this moment in time. So it really is difficult to say what a cosmic catastrophe might be. It might be very tiny, but still very significant, but nowhere near on the same scale as 5,000 years ago.
Though normally the Earth's magnetic field shields us from the worst impacts, scientists have observed that our magnetic field in recent years is weaker than usual. Again, they do not have any real answers as to why this would be the case. Perhaps it is merely the outcome of the continuing battering it has sustained from the solar flares. Whatever the answer may be, the fact is that if the magnetic field is extremely low and the solar flares extremely violent, as they are expected to be in 2012, a climate catastrophe is inevitable. The Maya considered the great rift that was visible in the night sky to be the Xibalba Bay, the road to the underworld, the place of the 9 gods. The Maya also considered the Milky Way to be the Great Mother, a very powerful Jungian archetype, and also saw the dark rift as her birth canal. Her womb, where new life was created, was therefore the galactic center, to which the Earth will once again align on December 21st, 2012. It is clear that the Maya believed that this would be a moment in time when the Earth, the child, connected once again with the womb of its mother. Only recently have scientists been able to confirm at the center of our Milky Way there is indeed a supermassive black hole. To achieve this, they tracked the orbits of 28 stars in the Milky Way's central region over a period of 16 years. According to Reinhard Genzel of the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics in Germany, who led the international study team, the center of our galaxy is a unique laboratory where we can study the fundamental processes of strong gravity, stellar dynamics, and star formation. It was only in the 17th century that Europe cast away its false belief that the Earth formed the center of the universe. Science showed that we were part of a solar system. Today we know that our solar system is part of a galaxy, and that this galaxy is but one of millions of such galaxies floating in space. Science is quiet about whether our solar system could be part of a larger system, even though that is precisely what certain legends say, and which might explain some of the longer calendars the Mayans and other ancient civilizations used. This concept is similar to the idea of the Maya, who saw an alignment of the Earth with the Sun towards the galactic center as a connection between our solar system and its mother, the galactic center, a stellar nursery that sits at the center of our galaxy. The Maya described it as a cosmic womb. Modern science sees it as a unique laboratory where stars are born.
One observation that was made by Lawrence Joseph in his study of 2012, that the phenomenon is not actually linked with the suicide cults that were so prominent in the 1990s and that thought the world was going to end in catastrophe. But the consensus, apart from some doomsayers like Patrick Gerrell, is that the whole thing is about a spiritual uplifting event. So as to what might happen on a global level, it might help to look at what the Hopi people tell us, because they say that we're in the fourth world, approaching the fifth world, and our transition from one world to another is through a kind of door which they call an emergence. The whole thing is a sort of an analogy of the birth process. They symbolize this with a symbol that is identical to the Cretan labyrinth symbol.
We measure precession by the slow movement of the constellation behind the spring equinox sun every year. That is why we call it the precession of the equinoxes. The spring equinox has been in Pisces for the last 2,000 years and is now coming into Aquarius. The Maya measured precession by the slow approach of the winter solstice sun to the galactic equator, the galactic alignment. This age transition doctrine was encoded into the legends of various cultures around the world, such as the myths of Mithras, in which Mithras sacrifices a bull to save humanity from sin. This represents the transition from the age of Taurus to the age of Aries in approximately 2000 BC. Amazingly, Mithras was born in a cave on December 25th by a virgin mother and was depicted surrounded by the 12 signs of the zodiac. He represents the sun, and December 25th was once the winter solstice, when the sun dies and is reborn after a 3-day standstill. Mithras waits in heaven for the end of time, when he will return to earth and awaken the dead and pass judgment.
So there were other versions of the mystery religions around the Mediterranean area, and they all involved the flight or the voluntary death of the God-man, the flight of the spirit from the body, a descent into the underworld, a resurrection, and ascent to heaven. The whole concept is actually encoded into our own religion, and it encodes the precession of the equinoxes, the end of time, an evolutionary opportunity for mankind as a kind of rebirth experience. Just as the long count calendar, the 13 Bacton cycle, is a sort of macroscopic version of the Tzolk'in, and therefore a planetary gestation suggesting an evolutionary progression for mankind as a whole, these mystery religions seem to suggest the same thing. This point could be the point where we take our 3-day trip to the underworld, perhaps confronting our demons before then going to paradise. This could actually be a mass near-death experience.
With the 2012 phenomenon, we have truly come to appreciate the Mayan culture, as well as learn that while Europe believed the Earth was flat and the center of the universe, it was all created in 4004 BC. On the other side of the world were a people who held a calendar that had cycles that were 5 millennia long and that knew astronomical knowledge we have only recently been able to confirm as scientifically real. If anything, in 2012, perhaps the Western imperialistic mindset will finally be able to acknowledge that in the aftermath of 2012, it can accept that ancient civilizations knew far more about astronomy and perhaps even how the universe really works than what science is only now slowly discovering. 2012 is meant to be a milestone, the end of an age. Within this context, we are at a point where we can shift from the descending phase of the cycle to the ascending phase. At the start of a new age, the 6th